Hello students, today I am going to talk to you about the Palas of Bengal. The period between 8th and 11th centuries witnessed an important phase in the history of Bengal. During this time frame, it was the Pala dynasty which made its mark. And this Pala dynasty, they were coming to power in a period which was preceded by anarchy, chaos, and disorder. Broadly speaking, post-Harshavardhana era saw the working of several disruptive forces in Bengal. Till 750 CE, when Gopala was elected by the people as their leader, and it was under Gopala that the Pala dynasty began its journey. Specifically, it was after the death of Shashanko that Bengal passed through deep political crisis which provided the Palas with an opportunity to make their mark in the political scenario of Bengal. Now, I would come to the origin of this Pala dynasty. Origin and early history of the Palas is full of controversial interpretations. Contemporary epigraphic evidences, or so to say, the direct records of this ruling house also maintain a kind of ambiguity. This has led to differences of approaches among the historians regarding the origin and the ancestry of this ruling house. In the commentary on the text Ashto Sahasrika Pragya Paramita by Haribhadra, there is a reference to a king, Dharmapala, as Rajabhatadi Vamsa Patita. Haraprasad Shastri, Dinesh Chandra Sarkar, and several other historians have identified this Dharmapala as the second ruler of the Pala dynasty, who is also known by the name of Dharmapala. According to Haraprasad Shastri, the term Rajbhat has been interpreted as Senapati or a military general, on the basis of which Haraprasad Shastri comes to the conclusion that Dharmapala was born in a family of military general. According to historian Dinesh Chandra Sarkar, the term Rajbhat was the title of a particular person, a well-known person as such, and therefore Dharmapala was born in an well-acclaimed family. However, such identifications are not beyond dispute. On the basis of the writings of poet Baribhadra, contemporary to the second Pala monarch, Dharmapala, it has been suggested by some historians that the Pala kings were connected with King Rajabhatta of the Buddhist Kharga dynasty of eastern Bengal. In this context, we should keep in mind that the monarchs of the Kharga dynasty, they carried the title Kharga with their name. But this was not the case with the Palas. So, we cannot conclude that these Pala rulers, they were connected in some way or other with the Kharga dynasty of eastern Bengal. Tibetan historian Taranath has forwarded a similar story. The veracity of such stories are not really beyond doubt, but the fact remains that the Palas ruled over a large area which was adjacent to the ocean or the sea. The Palas have been described as Buddhists in their own official records. Copper plates of Pala kings indicate the Buddhist affiliation of these rulers in definite terms. They were residents of North Bengal, as Ramacharita mentions Barendra or Barendra Bhum, or North Bengal as the fatherland or Pitri Bhumi of the Pala rulers. Now, coming to the Pala lineage, Gopala and his descendants added the term Pala at the end of their names following the similar practice. Actually, in this context, I would like to mention that the word Pala was analogous to the word Palaka, which, if translated, would mean a guardian or a protector. And perhaps the Pala kings wanted to present themselves or to project themselves as the guardian or protector of the people. coming to Gopala. Approximately, Gopala ruled from circa 750 to 770 CE, but there are certain controversy regarding the span of his rule or regarding the dates. So we are depending on a kind of an approximation. And I stick to the date, circa 750 to 770 CE. The chaos and the anarchy that engulfed Bengal for almost a century after the death of Harshavardhana made the people elect a chieftain called Gopala to be their king around CE 750. Gopala must have given ample proof of his ability and his political wisdom before this election was done. In fact, it is referred in several contemporary sources that Gopala probably earned a name by resisting a foreign invasion. Probably this was mentioned in the Bhagalpur grant of Narayanpala. Here, a pun has been used on the word Kamakari, which in the context of Lord Buddha refers to Mara, while it may refer to King Harsha of Kamarupa in context of the Pala ruler Gopala. Taranath, the Tibetan historian, most probably confused Harsha of Kamarupa with Harsha, the ruler of Kashmir, who according to him was a contemporary of Gopala. What is coming out of all these sources that perhaps the land that Gopala was ruling at this point of time was attacked by the foreigners coming from Kamrupa, and Gopala very ably resisted such foreign attack and earned a name for that. A man of unusual abilities, Gopala easily commanded respects from his contemporaries. The Mongei plate of Devapala records the boundaries of Gopala's kingdom, and which is said to be up to the sea coast. If Taranatha is to be believed, Magadha was also annexed by Gopala. Here, one should keep in mind that Gopala mainly insisted on maintenance of peace and order in the kingdom that he was gradually building up. He did not really venture into ambitious project or tried to build up a very great empire at this point of time, but he tried to consolidate whatever he had in his hand and handed over a strong consolidated kingdom to his son. Now we come to Dharmapala. Dharmapala ruled from circa 770 to 810 CE. The period from 750 to 790 CE witnessed the tripartite struggle among the three great powers of early medieval India. These three powers are the Pratiharas, the Palas, and the Rashtrakutas. They fought amongst themselves for the imperial suzerainty of northern India and for the possession of Kanauj, the imperial city of the time. Dharmapala, as I have already mentioned, inherited a consolidated kingdom, and it seems his ambition was to make Bengal the suzerain power in northern India. Therefore, he turned his attention to the west and focused on westward expansion. The Gwalior Prashasti informs that the Pratihara king, Vatsaraja, took away the sovereignty of Kanauj from Bandikula, and thus presenting himself as a rival in front of Dharmapala. So it became inevitable that the Pratihara king Vatsaraja and Dharmapala would both contest for gaining the supremacy over Kanauj. We know from the Vani and Radhangarh plates that the Rashtrakuta king Dhruva defeated Vatsaraja in course of this tripartite struggle, and he had inflicted a defeat on the Gowda king too. In spite of failing in his first attempt, Dharmapala did not give up his imperial ambition and made further attempts to occupy Kanauj. Before long, we find him in possession of the Ganga, Jamuna, Doab. The Sanjan plates of Amogha Varsha, the Rashtrakuta ruler, records that the Gaura king was defeated by the Rashtrakuta ruler Dhruva in the Ganges Jamuna valley, and this is also confirmed by the Baroda and the Surat plates of Korkoraju. So chronologically, it stands that first Vatsharaja and Dharmapala, they had contested for the possession of Kanauj, and then there was, as a result of the conflict, ultimately Vatsharaja was defeated, and again the conflict started between the Rashtrakutas and the Palas, in course of which Dharmapala was defeated by the Rashtrakuta monarch, and as a result of this, the tripartite struggle brought all these three powers in conflict with each other for their control of northern India. Ultimately, the supremacy of the situation depended on who would come out of this context as the victor. The conflict between the Rashtrakutas and the Pratiharas, and later the internal strifes within the Rashtrakuta empire, provided Dharmapala with a second opportunity to give definite shape to his imperial ambitions. The 7th verse of the Munger plate of Devapala state that his army in course of Digvijay visited Kedara in the Himalayas and Gokarna, which has been identified as the Gokarna Tirtham of Nepal. The 12th verse of the Khalimpur plate enumerates the countries that acknowledge his supremacy, that is the supremacy of Dharmapala. These included the kings of Bhoja, Vidarbha, Matsya, Jaipur, Madra, Eastern Punjab, Kuru, Delhi region, Jadu, Mathura, Yavana, Western Punjab, Avanti, Malwa, Gandhara, Taxila, and Kira, Kangra valley. All these kings were forced to pay their respect to Dharmapala. Dharmapala took possession of Kanauj ultimately from Indra Raja and installed his own nominee, his own protege, Chakrayudha, on the throne of Kanauj. Not only that, he called an imperial assembly there too to mark the victory of the Palas in Kanauj. However, this was not just the end of the story. The conflict to gain control over northern India and imperial Kanauj continued. Nagavatta II, son and successor of Pratihara king Vatsharaja, once again tried to consolidate the Pratihara power in order to make another trial of strength with the Palas. He built up an alliance with the kings of Sindhu, Andhra, Vidarbha, and Kalinga, thus preparing a strong confederacy of state. Nagavatta II then defeated Chakrayudha, Dharmapala's nominee, on the throne of Kanauj. This was nothing but a challenge to the supremacy of the Pala monarch, Dharmapala. Dharmapala and the conflict between Dharmapala and Nagavatta II thus became inevitable. From the records of the contemporary time, we can learn, especially from the records that the vassals of the Pratiharas forward, they claim victories of the Pratihara king Nagavatta II over the Gaura king Dharmapala. In an inscription of Avanti Barman II, grandson of Bahuka Dhavala and a feudatory of Mahendrapala, it has been claimed that Bahuka Dhavala had defeated the king Dharma, and this king Dharma is usually identified as Dharmapala. However, the victory so strenuously and so valiantly won by the Pratiharas could not offer the Pratihara king the supreme overlordship of northern India. This is because of the appearance of the Rashtrakutas in the political scenario. Rashtrakutas under Govinda III appeared on the scene, and the Radhangarh plates record that the Pratihara king was defeated in a way that in fear he vanished nobody knew where. Govinda III overran the Pratihara territory and advanced as far as the Himalayas. The Sanjan plates inform us that Dharmapala and Chakrayudha, they decided not to contest the military supremacy of Govinda III and they submitted to the Rashtrakuta monarch on their own. In the Nilgand inscriptions, it is mentioned that Govinda III fettered the people of Gaura. Dharmapala, after his defeat by Nagabhatta II, did not risk another encounter with the Rashtrakutas and thought it wise to submit to Govinda III. For a comparison between the Vani and the Radhangarh grants show that the northern invasion of Govinda III can be assigned to the period between 807 and 808 CE. It is therefore clear that the reverse that Dharmapala faced must have been before this date. Dharmapala is considered to be the greatest king of the Pala dynasty. He assumed highest imperial titles of the time like Parambhattaraka, Parameshwara and Maharajadhiraja. His name and fame was not confined to India alone. Poet Sodhala of the 11th century calls him Uttara Patha Swamin, that is, the Lord of the northern part. He assumed the title Bikramashila either to signify his might or to commemorate his foundation of the Bikramashila monastery, which in turn attracted scholars not only from different parts of India but from other parts of the world as well. It gradually developed like the Nalanda University. The Somapuri Mahavihara also owed its origin to Dharmapala. Dharmapala is credited with the grant of 200 villages to the Nalanda University for the maintenance and well-running of this university. The famous 8th century Buddhist scholar Shantarakshita, who is considered to be a contemporary of Dharmapala. Dharmapala was basically a devout Buddhist and he sort of patronized the spread of Buddhism. But at the same time, being a judicious ruler, he also looked after the welfare of his subjects in general and never interfered in their religious beliefs. He believed that each one should follow their own respective religious theories. This is alluded to in the 5th verse of Monger plate of his son Devpala. In spite of being a devout Buddhist, the Keshava Prashasti, which was written in the 26th year of Dharmapala's reign, records the setting up of Chaturmukha Linga of Mahadeva in the great Buddhist holy place. It is further recorded in the Bhagalpur plate that incidence of taxation was quite just, and Dharmapala basically wanted to build up a social welfare state. Kings sought protection under him, which he gladly granted. The defeated kings were not uprooted, but reinstated in their homes, and a friendly policy was pursued towards them. It is no wonder that a monarch with such brilliant achievements, to his credit, whose government was based on so just and honest principles should win the love and respect of all the classes of his subjects. So Dharmapalo gradually became a very popular ruler. His court poet records that his praises were sung by the cowherd boys, the hermits, the village folks, the traders, and the rich alike. According to Tibetan historian Tarana, Dharmapalo's kingdom stretched from the Bay of Bengal to Delhi and Jalandhar in the north and to the Vindhya ranges in the south. In addition, Taranath also states that Dharmapalo had a large number of vassal states in the periphery of his kingdom in the Punjab, the Western Hills, Rajputana, Malwa, and Berar. Dharmapalo was followed by his son Devapalo. Devapalo ascended the throne in circa 810 and ruled till 850 CE. Devapalo's rule also reflected the glory of the Palo dynasty, which spread far and wide. It is stated in the Munger plate that in course of his Digvijay policy, Devapalo advanced as far as the Vindhyas and the Kamboja land. This is confirmed by the 13th verse of the Badala pillar inscription. It seems that Devapalo fought with the Rashtrakutas in between, particularly during the period when Amogha Barsho was a minor. It is not precisely known where exactly the Kamboja land was located. Thus, the indication in the Badala pillar inscription that by the wise counsel and policy of the ministers of Devapalo, the whole tract of India bounded by Vindhyas and the Himalayas and by the eastern and western seas paid tribute to Devapala may not be just a mere political exaggeration but actual fact. These achievements is the said Prashasti have been attributed to his ministers like Darbhopani or Kedaro Mishra, who served Devapalo, the Gaura king. And according to Kedaro Mishra, Devapalo eradicated the race of the Utkalas, humbled the pride of the Huns, and shattered the conceit of the Dravida and the Gurjara kings. So, it is quite clear that Devapalo was an extremely powerful monarch. However, the supremacy that he won during the first half of his rule was challenged in the second part, and Devapalo had to undertake another expedition to curb the power of his adversaries like the Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas. One should keep in mind that the conflict between these three powers, that is the Palas, the Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas, it went on. It was a continuous process, one power gaining the upper hand at one point of time. So Devapalo also had to face reversals, but again he came out of that reversal and established his supremacy. I would not go into the details of the successors who followed Devapalo, and here I should mention two rulers who kind of revived the Pala rule in Bengal in two phases. The first one was Mohipal, who ruled from circa 977 to 1027 CE. In the second half of the 10th century, the ruling Pala king was ousted by the healer tribes called the Kambojas, whose raid was initially perhaps just to loot and plunder, but gradually it aimed at establishing political base in Bengal. When Mohipalo came to power, he defeated the Kamboja rulers and re-established Pala supremacy in Bengal. Mohipalo had two basic issues with him. One was the revival of Buddhism, and the second was to protect the Pala bastion from powerful outside invasions. Ramapalo, the second ruler that I am going to mention, who again revived the Pala glory from several down from the adverse situation, Ramapalo ruled from circa 1072 to 1126 CE. He was an ambitious ruler and he was bent on re-establishing the glory of the Palas and in extending his territory after the debacle of losing the kingdom to the hill tribes. He gained control over Kamarupo and Kalinga and revived the Pala fortunes in the 11th century. Buddhism, although almost in a state of decline in rest of India, continued to flourish as a religion of choice in the Pala dominion during Ramapala's reign. It was during this reign that Sandhya Karnandi he composed Ramacharita. Ramapala led a long life, campaigning continuously to maintain the strength of his dynasty. His strength of character, his sound decision-making power, his resourcefulness clearly visible in all his actions and that he successfully initiated, ultimately led to the fact that he handed over a kingdom to his successor which was much better in shape than what he found himself. After installing his son to the throne, Ramapalo is said to have committed ritual suicide by drowning himself in the river Ganges in CE 1120. After Ramapalo's disappearance, we come to know from the Tibetan historian Taranath that Ramapalo is identified by many as well as by Taranath himself as the last of the last ruler or the last of the Pala dynasty. But actually there are several other sources which point out to the existence of at least 5 more rulers. But the Pala fortune was definitely declining at this point of time. Were the causes of disintegration. Several factors led to the collapse of the Pala dynasty at this point of time. It is well known that after the end of the tripartite struggle among the Palas, Pratiharas and the Rashtrakutas, new powers like the Kalachuris, the Chandelas, the Chalukyas and the Paramaras, they were coming up and establishing their power in the Indian political scenario in the early medieval phase. They are continuously raiding on the Pala bastion, and such continuous raids led to great strain on the treasury of the Palas. So there was a kind of an economic crisis too, apart from the problem of continuous warfare. Again, the feudatories also took advantage of the weakness of the central power and assumed a defiant, if not an independent, attitude. We know about 2 such cases in Magadha. It seems that at the time of the Kaivarta revolt, the Pala feudatories of Magadha had assumed a semi-independent status. From 11th century onwards, the Pala power started collapsing. The disruptive tendencies and the disintegrating forces were kept in check for some time in 2 phases, that is once by Mohipal and secondly by Ramapala. But ultimately, the Pala power was finally destroyed by the upcoming Hindu Sena dynasty under Vijayasena, thereby ending the supremacy of a major Buddhist power in the subcontinent and a glorious era. In conclusion, we can say that the Pala period is considered to be a golden era in the history of Bengal. It witnessed the rise from a period of disorder, chaos and anarchy to a period of stability, prosperity and fame. with a system of administration centering round the monarch, efficiently helped by his ministers. It focused on a strong state and looked after the welfare of the people. Pala monarchs were astute diplomats and great military conquerors. Their army was marked for their huge elephant forces. The navy was also used both for commercial as well as for defensive purposes. The Pala Empire built up diplomatic relations with the Srivijaya Empire, the Tibetan Empire, and the Arab Abbasid Caliphate. Basic coins that have been found in the Pala archaeological sites prove such interactions between these foreign powers, and this is also mentioned by the Arab historians. As a result of such interactions, trade relations flourished between Bengal and the Middle East. Islam made its appearance in Bengal for the first time during Pala rule. This period also experienced enrichment of art and architecture of Bengal. Great monasteries like the Odantapuri Monastery, the Somapura Mahavihara, and as well as temples were built up during this period. Learning centers like Vikramashila was constructed, and University of Nalanda also was patronized. Noted Buddhist scholars from the Pala period include Atisha, Shantarakshita, Sara, and others. Proto-Bengali language was developed during this time. The Charjapada was composed at this point of time, and its writers were known as Mahasiddhas, and they came from Bengal, Assam, and Orissa and Bihar. Paintings and sculptures were also other forms of artistic excellence during the Pala rule. Although the Pala kings nurtured strong Buddhist inclinations on the whole, the social structure represented the essence of Brahmanism in its organization, though the caste system was not that rigid. Liberal social policy of the Pala made it easier for the Kaivartas to rise to prominence. Rigidity of the Varna Jati system did not affect the societal parameters of the Pala era. Thank you.